Hello and welcome to the Animator Island test webinar / Q&A. I got this brand new webinar software that we are taking for a test drive today, and we decided to connect this with a little question and answer session. And maybe you already have something on your mind that you might want to ask us. JK should join us too in a little bit. And we're both mainly 2D animators. I've done a little bit of 3D, but I mean, the principles of animation are the same no matter what technique we are using. So just fire away. Hi, Sai. I don't really know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry, but I really enjoyed talking with you a little bit on Facebook. It's great to see you. And actually, I have a couple of questions to you guys too. Namely, I want to know what your struggles are with animation, or more specifically, learning animation. Like, what are things, brick walls that you run into again and again? What are things that you would like to learn more about? Because that's actually what we'll be using this webinar software for. We're going to do something like live animation classes, or maybe private mentoring or stuff like that, which I think is pretty exciting. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can start typing them. We also have a couple of cool features in this webinar software, how we can highlight questions and stuff like that. And actually, some of you can I can give you the mic and the webcam if you want, and you can ask me the question on video, which is pretty cool, I think, especially, if moving forward, we're doing classes, stuff like that. So let me see if JK is already showing up. Wonder what he's doing. And just in case that there are some people here who don't know what Animator Island is, I saw that some people were just sharing the webinar link, which I think is pretty cool. We are an website all about animation. JK and I was still in college when we started this. Oh, and I think there's JK joining us. He still has to click on the microphone button to turn his mic on, I think.
Hello.
Webcam. There he is.
How's
awesome. I was a little worried when you weren't there yet.
That's fair.
That's pretty cool. So we have to frame ourselves a little better.
It's true.
Cool. Okay. So how are you doing?
Good. How about you?
Fine. The people didn't ask any questions yet, so we have to mix them up. I figure.
I apologize for my tardiness, but I'm here. Yeah. Now I get to poke around and see what buttons do.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I'm very happy with that. We can just see each other, and that they can hopefully see us. Yeah, actually, guys, can you hear and see us fine? That's actually important too. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And my question, what you should be thinking about right now, because that is something that we need to shape the future of these classes or of the whole Animator Island website. What are your struggles when it comes to animation, and specifically learning animation, maybe? What are things that you struggle with? Let us know, and we'll try to help you. Yeah. Now it's complete.
There you
go. I mean, we could also proactively answer some stuff. Like
we could talk about our own struggles too, because maybe that would let other people know that they are not alone in the fact that this is hard.
Yeah. You have something in mind?
Okay, so I guess we got some lag according to the chat window, which is supposed to be expected now and then.
Yeah. I mean, it should not be more than 10 seconds. Okay. But yeah, we're seeing your chat questions a little delayed. So just so you know that. Yeah.
I have a question for you, just as a wondering while we're sitting here.
Okay.
Are you just in natural light? Because man, your picture looks great over there.
It's not natural light.
Uh,
It's actually a photo light.
all right, I gotta get me one of them. Because, man, like it's crystal
Yeah,
clear.
no, it's already 7 p.m. here.
Makes sense.
And it's actually pretty cool that I saw the registrations. Like we got people from India, we got people from America. I'm from Germany. It's pretty cool that we can all come together like this and a room-ish experience. It's pretty cool. We had a short speak request, I think, or was that an accident? So yeah, for the very brave people, you can also try that. You can click the button for speak requests. I don't know where exactly they are on your interface. I think at the top right corner or something like that. And then you will be prompted to do a little, like you have to test your mic and your webcam to make sure that it's actually working and we can hear you. And then you can talk to us. But you can also just write, of course.
And since we are randomly testing things, and everybody here is, I'm sure, very patient with us, I will poke around the screen share button to see if I can get my Cintiq to be able to be shared.
You might have to install a plugin, because I already did that.
We can't all be as amazing as you, Ferd. Some of us arrive late and unprepared. All right, let me see.
Struggles. If I think about my own struggles, I feel like what really helped me to improve my animation is when I started using reference. Before I was telling myself that I was using reference, like I was pulling up stuff. Like when I was animating a jump, I was looking at reference of a guy jumping, and I was like, okay, so now I know how that works. And then I just started animating around, or I like always had in the back of my mind, like I could be using reference, but walk cycles. I've read so much about walk cycles, and then I just started doing it. But the thing is, doing animation is just such an artificial thing. Like you create everything, physics and everything from your head. If you look at reference, if you look closely, if you analyze, like if you actually look, okay, the foot is meeting the ground at this specific point, and you see how the arcs of stuff are, the arcs of hips and of arms, and you follow that, maybe it's an attitude walk, maybe somebody's very angry, then you will find stuff in there that you just could not think of. And actors, and even yourself, you just do that naturally. You just do that for free. So that's one of my biggest points. When I was at the point where I was like, how do I improve my animation? I had to look at reference more closely. I see that some people have problems with the video and audio. The only thing I got from the Webinar Jam people, the creator of the software, when I asked them what we should do if I have problems, they said, you guys can refresh the browser. You can just hit F5 or the refresh button, and it might get better. So I hope that will work for you.
I'm going to refresh quickly myself because my screen share button is no longer working, and I'm still messing around with it, so I'll be right back.
Okay. And then again, I'm not sure how much this is a factor that we are all on different ends of the world. I mean, it should work, hopefully. Okay, Toma says her problem is that sometimes she sees that there's a problem in her animation, but she cannot clearly see what it is. Yeah, I mean, it's a big step already if you're seeing that there's something wrong. Like
100%.
there are a lot of animators who are just like, oh, I'm done now. It looks okay. And they don't see that they could do better, that they could do more. Yeah, like I have a little bit of a checklist in my head. Like, let's assume it's not a big acting mistake. Let's assume it's just, you made an animation, a very physical thing, and you just feel like something isn't right in there. You could check the arcs, especially of like the wrist, or the legs and the hip and the shoulders, and just trace them and see if it is following nice arcs. And what sometimes happens is that you start an arc and then it becomes straight, and that is something that you can't really see it. You just feel that the movement just got a little weird at that point. Like that is something that often happens. And if you set like an arc, you often get a triangle. Those are shapes that you need to look out for in arcs too. And then, of course, the spacing is also a very important thing. Like if you have an arm moving from one side to another and you have an ease in and ease out, then you cannot have another ease or like two frames very closely to each other in the middle where it actually should be the fastest and the spacing should be the biggest. This is actually something that you can see in the animation curves. If you work in 3D and you open up the animation curves, and they need to be silky smooth unless you have a reason to break that, meaning the character hits a table, a wall, or something, has some outside resistance, then curves can break immediately. But other than that, if it's organic, you should look out for dents in your curves. And I sometimes do it that way around. I look at my animation curves and I see a part in there that's weird, like a spike or something breaks off. And then I look at the animation and I see like, oh, yeah, there is something there. There's a stop or a jerk or something that I need to take out. And sometimes in 3D, if you're lucky, you just delete a keyframe there and then it works. Yeah, JK, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, there's a couple quick, easy things you can do. And then there's the very hard thing, which is continual practice until you start to just instinctively figure these things out. And it'll happen with time. I mean, you'll get better at it. But immediately, one thing that always helped me was mirroring things. So if you can watch your animation mirrored, sometimes things will just pop even more. And then you'll be like, well, obviously that's the issue. And this works with drawing too. If you ever have a drawing and something just doesn't quite seem right, flip everything and see, because sometimes like an eyeball has suddenly fallen down on the face or something like that. So if you don't have, if you're doing, more straight up traditional animation, or even if you just, the curves seem to be working fine, run it through something that'll mirror it and see if anything really jumps out at you, because sometimes they'll be pretty obvious at that point. I'm just going to do an article about that coming up, so I'm glad you reminded me. I think that I'm trying to think if there's anything else that for me has really helped. Other than practice, I'm just not sure that you can, if you are very late stages and you run into this issue where you see something is wrong, you don't know what it is, that's hard. But if you're early stages, then you might consider just doing a few kind of tweaked keyframes in a brand new file, or just save your file as a separate file and then change some stuff and see if that makes the problem better or worse. Because sometimes just a little change will exaggerate the problem, and then you'll be like, well, that's obviously the issue. Or it will just suddenly seem not quite as bad, and then you can go back to your original file and you can make those adjustments. So that might be another option.
There's also a technique for 3D called fencing. If you have an animation that you are otherwise content with, but you realize that at frame something something, there's something wrong. Then you can just keyframe everything. Oh, I touched the mic. You can keyframe everything before and everything after the moment that looks weird. And then you just delete everything that is between there and you start fresh. You can, it's sometimes like if it was a weird jerk or weird something in the animation, sometimes that's already gone. If you just fenced it, deleted every keyframes there, then that can help you to just focus on the area that is wrong and keep the rest of your animation intact. Then there's another thing. I wouldn't say that's a beginner thing, but I mean, that happens sometimes to professionals too, that they add eases where no ease should be. Like if you have something coming closer to the ground, it shouldn't ease before it hits the ground. And it's obvious in a bouncing ball, you know, we all have done, hopefully, the bouncing ball exercise. But, you know, maybe if you're in a complicated fighting sequence or something, then it can happen that you confuse something and you ease where no ease should be because it's like hitting the fist or something. So really ask yourself, what force is working here? What is making this slower? Is it gravity? Like if I move something up, then, you know, it gets heavier and then it slows down. Is it the muscles? Is it because I stopped this motion here? Or is there no reason for it to ease? Then there should not be an ease there. And then, of course, to come back to reference, you can also then shoot reference and see what it might be. Yeah. Oh, I got a note from Jenna, who's observing everything. My wife helps me with this.
My wife was downstairs watching football, and she was just like, "Don't ask me for help." But that's fine. She also said, "Maybe I'll take a nap," and I was like, "Okay."
We can still do it.
Ramzan had a question. It says, "I face the issues with like body lock in my animation. What to do to solve problems while starting the shot so that body lock or any lock part lock didn't affect my animation?" I'd imagine that is more to do with a 3D question where something is not moving along. Are you familiar with this issue?
Yeah, can you maybe elaborate on that? I'm not quite sure what you mean with body lock. Yeah, but we will get back to.
So if you can elaborate a little bit on that, then we can come back to it. Not 100% sure what body lock is.
And Samia says, my struggling with animation has to do with personal development. I have the feeling that I'm walking without moving. Do you think this question is for both of you, that I can develop myself by my own without attending animation school? Yeah, there are certainly a lot of people who have. There are, especially if you look into the YouTube and Newgrounds scene, there are some very brilliant and talented self-taught animators who just started, they just started making films, which is pretty cool. Like many people who go to animation school, they don't start with making films. They start with making exercises, and then eventually some project semester, they do their first film. And many self-taught animators, they do the great thing that they just start producing, that they just start making films. So that can be a pretty cool way to jump into the cold water. But sometimes it's not the best to make progress, because the cool thing about animation school is that you have mentors, that you have people who are better than you and who can, first of all, they can give you guidelines. They can right from the beginning say, if you do it like this, it's really easy. Like, you know, if somebody tells you, you need to do eases, you need to do the bouncing ball stuff, that's how it works, then you have a head start. And they can also look at your work maybe and point out, like, this is going wrong. Here's how you can improve that. And yeah, to come back also to the question, like if I cannot see what's wrong with my animation, that's really hard on your own to see what's wrong with your animation. So that's the advantage of animation school. But then again, maybe you don't even have to go to school for that. You just have to surround yourself with like-minded people, with other animators, and that's also something that is now very possible through the internet. You can find animation communities like on Newgrounds, like the 11-second club. Like if it's really animation skill that you're after, filmmaking skill is, I think, a little more difficult. But if it's like pure animation, handcraft skills, then you can take part in the 11-second club competitions and get feedback from very good people there. I'm talking. Do you have anything to add, JK?
Yeah, I kind of lived through that. Because I was much more of a self-taught animator than going to a traditional animation school. I went to a traditional animation school, but it was right out of high school, and I didn't really super want to be there. I just wanted to go do animation. So my teachers were really upset with me because I wouldn't do my work and things like that. So I ended up with a different degree instead, and then I just started teaching myself animation. So I know exactly what you're talking about, or I hopefully know exactly what you're talking about the whole walking but not really moving forward thing. It seems like, you hit a plateau. And I think every animator or artist in general hits those plateaus at times. And it's tricky because you're like, you look at something maybe you did a year ago or however long ago, and you just don't see the progress that you once saw. One thing to keep in mind is that the better you get, the harder it's going to get to be better, because you will consistently reach these points where you now know so much about what you need to do, but it's just not, you just haven't gotten over that hump yet. And I think that's where a mentor really helps. I'm all for animation school if you want to do it, but I find that it is often very expensive, and it really depends on the teacher. The teacher is so important in any sort of learning. So if you can find yourself a good mentor, that whether it's in a school or outside of a school, they can really help you get past any sort of stumbling block that you're at where you just don't feel like you're progressing forward. And sometimes it's just a matter of continuing to do it for a very long time until you get over that. Another thing that I would suggest if you find yourself in that situation where you're just kind of stuck is do something really different. So if you're big on 3D animation, do some 2D animation. Doesn't matter if you can't draw your way out of a paper bag. That's totally fine. If you're big on 2D animation, try some stop motion. Do something very different than what you're used to, because sometimes that'll just knock you out of your comfort zone. And then you'll start to be like, okay, this is monstrously hard, but I'm learning a lot from it, if that makes sense. So that might be something to try. As far as animation school goes, though, if you find the right one and the right teachers and the right group and stuff, it's invaluable. I ended up going back to animation school after I had taught myself, and I learned so many little tips and tricks, like Ferdinand was talking about, where, you just do things this way and it's so much easier. So I highly recommend that. But in the event that you can't afford animation school, or you just don't have the time for it right now, or whatever the case might be, I don't think that's necessarily required. It's useful. I wouldn't not recommend it, but you kind of have to decide as you go where you're at and if you think it would be helpful or not. Everybody's going to be a little different. There's no hard and fast rule to it. So
yeah. I also think if you go the self-taught road, you need to balance the ways that you learn a little. Like there are different methods to learn. You can learn through exercise that you do for the sake of exercise. Like, for example, if you say, okay, I've never done a bouncing ball, I'm doing a bouncing ball now. And now I'm doing a sad bouncing ball, a happy bouncing ball. Now a heavy one, a light one. You give yourself all these exercises. By the way, we have the 51 animation exercises on Animator Island. You can just Google that, actually, and you already find it. And you do these so you don't get too attached to it. So, it's just the exercise. If it didn't work out, you can just do the next one, and the next one will be better, of course. Then there is doing animation, but not for exercise, for storytelling, because you want to tell something. And if you do that, you potentially get stuck for this project, because you lock yourself. If you do a short film, you want the short film to look the same for the entire duration of the film, right? So you don't want to develop too much, because then you look at your beginning and you're like, oh, this didn't look good. So sometimes these projects really lock yourself in, and sometimes that's not the best way to progress, to jump right into filmmaking. And
Ferdinand, just since this is a test, can you drop your webcam down to S?
Yeah, I can try. Oh, JK's gone.
You have to turn your mic back on. Probably your mic off. I can't hear you anymore.
Hello, am I back?
Oh, there, you're back. Okay.
Okay, apparently switching the resolution also mutes you.
Yeah, it's weird. So maybe you can see if that's slightly better call, or is it coming through better, or do you have any?
Let us know.
I don't see a way to pause anything, so I don't think we can pause on our end.
Yeah, we can't pause. I think that now you can't either. There will be a replay available for everybody who is here. So or maybe we do it publicly. I don't know yet, but so you can definitely watch it again. So we might get back to that question.
Yeah. So Sai, let us know if that was any different.
Oh, JK's gone again. I hope I'm not gone too while he is switching resolutions. There you are.
Okay, so we were going to get back to the other question about locking, which I think now we might have a better idea of.
Okay, there are ease-ins, but it looks like some parts are pinned there, and I think that's a really specific 3D problem. Actually, in the last video that I did on the YouTube channel, which is analyzing the animation of In a Heartbeat, there's a moment where doing an arm motion, the arm gets stuck in the middle of the arc and then continues. And I can't see the animation from the side, obviously, but I think it was a walk cycle. So the animator looked at it a little bit from the side and animated that correctly. But if you watch it in the 3D camera, because of perspective, it can sometimes look like body parts get stuck. That is sometimes something that does rarely happen to 2D animators, because we can just be like, I want the arm to go from here to there, and then we can just draw this. And in 3D, you always, it's a stiff puppet. You can't do too much that breaks physics or something like this. You would need to find a way around there. If it's with arms, you should try to animate less with inverse kinematics and more with forward kinematics, because the problem is with inverse kinematic controllers, if they are in the air and you move the character around, the arm is pinned there. I mean, that's what IK is supposed to do, but it's supposed to do it only if the character touches something. Then this is super helpful, super valuable. If the character places the hand on the table, use the IK controller, it will stay there. But for anything in the air, for anything swinging with the arms, just use forward kinematics, because you have the arc built in and it will not get stuck in the air. Of course, if it's with other body parts, it might be a perspective thing. And you just might have to stay in camera view and animate it until it looks correct in the camera. Sometimes you might have to do tricks to do, like, if really nothing else helps, you just put a keyframe on every frame and you do it by hand. You know, if you don't get the interpolation right without the hand being pinned or stuck or something like that, then you might have to just do every single animation frame by hand at this particular moment. Okay.
Now, one thing I would add to that, though 3D animation is not my area of expertise, if something is kind of stuck, what you might try is to essentially go in and kind of arrange poses in your keyframes first, maybe, instead of kind of, it's a little bit more of a pose to pose animation instead of a straight ahead kind of thing. So like if you're using kinematics and it's just not working in that regard, you might go a little ways in your timeline, pop in a new keyframe that make sure everything is where you want it to be, and then see how the computer handles that. If it doesn't do it well enough, then you may not have a choice but to go in and actually force it to do what you want to. But one thing I found, even with 2D puppet-like animation, sometimes it just doesn't want to do what I tell it to. So I have to go in and set a whole new key. And then that kind of takes care of it some of the time. So it might be something to try anyway.
Okay, Random says he mostly uses a FK, which, yeah, should you do in that situations? Do you have an example? Like, is it a specific body part or like,
So here's, while we're working on several things at once, with size issue, he said it was choppy before I arrived as well. So Ferdinand, can you like turn off your stuff for a moment? I'll wave around for a second and see if it's still choppy even without you here. And then you come back in a second and we'll see if maybe the issue is somewhere there. I'm just trying to figure out how we can diagnose what's going on here.
Right.
If it's still choppy without you here, then I can't imagine it's on our end because it looks fine for me.
Yeah. Okay, I'll be dropping out for a little bit, which should shift our
20 seconds. Oh, will that mess everything else up? I don't even know.
No, it's just you take over as the main presenter, and it shifts the whole connection thing more towards the US. So let's try that for a second.
And then obviously we can talk about Ferdinand while he's not here. He's amazing, and don't tell him I said that. But so I guess with that side of the picture being off, are you still experiencing the same issues, or has it improved at all? We're just trying to figure, because I looked up some troubleshooting for Webinar Jam, and I didn't come up with anything that immediately said if this is, like Ferdinand said, usually you just refresh and hopefully it fixes it. But I guess we'll wait for you to see if there's any problems still, or if it's any better. And again, I appreciate everybody here to kind of walk us through this. We'd like to get the kinks worked out so that we can do a lot more of these and answer questions and help people and go through your actual work and get an idea of what we can help with, because sometimes that's just really helpful to have another animator go through your timeline and your files and such and say, here, I might have done this a little differently, or I really appreciate this that you did. And just getting that feedback is invaluable. So yeah, does anybody is anybody having trouble with the audio and visual now, or is it better? Is it worse? Any other input on that? And then hopefully Ferdinand will be back soon. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Hello. Okay.
So we're waiting to hear back if anybody found that better or worse. And
now I'm back. Getting worse. Oh no. Yeah. So it's good to know.
Okay.
So I looked up. You're the only one with an those new kinds of IP addresses. I think it's IP6 or something. Like the other people have the classical IP address, and you have this new format. I think I need to talk with the Webinar Jam guys about that. But so far, that's the only difference that I can see.
Thank you.
The animator.
Courtesy of Ferdinand, and actually the bottom is even better because it has the whole logo down at the bottom.
Yeah, I realized later that you can almost never see it. Like we had those on for one of the FMX when we were interviewing all those great people, but you could never see the island. But okay,
that's a great shirt.
Oh, Sai is writing a long question. Yeah, problem with connection. Therefore, Samir writes his question. Both of your advices are very professional and very good explained. Thank you very much. Oh, that's nice. In the beginning, Ferdinand, you mentioned possibilities for animation classes. I hope for 2D animation because that's what I'm doing. How are the chances for that? Is it any plan for near future? Assume that detailed information about that will be on your website. Yes, indeed. There will be live animation classes coming. And of course, we will write that. We will announce that on animatorisland.com. And we also have to do that because I bought this webinar software. And we need to use that for something. Yeah, I'm still working out like what will be the topics, in what order, and what would be the best format for it. So if you have any input on that, like maybe even from other online animation classes you took or something like that, I'm currently thinking about like a series of classes, like over 4 weeks, one lesson every week. And then there will be like a little assignment at the end of it that you can do or not do, that we can then also talk about during the classes. So yeah, that's a thing that will be coming in some form or another. You can also just always write us on animatorisland.com. Like if you currently don't think of anything, but later you're like, oh, that would be good for an animation class. Then you could just go to the Animator Island contact form or write to me at ferdinand@animatorisland.com or Ferdinand if you want to do the American pronunciation. Yeah, so there will be something.
And we've also talked in the past a little bit about the potential of doing some videos based on the 51 animation exercises to kind of walk through those and say, here's how to approach it. And so that's something that we've been looking into for a while now. So it may be time. And I can't speak for Ferdinand, but I appreciate you coming and saying, hey, is there any interest, are you still doing that and that sort of thing? Because it kind of fuels us. Sometimes we don't, we have a lot of things going on in life because everybody does, but to have somebody say, I'd be really interested in this thing, it motivates us to go do that thing. So it encourages us, okay, let's do this thing. And so I don't know.
I prepared a little poll because this software can do that, in some possible products or classes that we might be offering. Jenna, can you activate that? Might pop up at the screen soon or with a tiny delay. I don't know. Yeah. So one of the options is that we show you how the 51 animation exercises one by one, how you can do them, kind of like a master solution. Then the other thing is weekly classes that focus more on the theory, meaning that we won't be going into specific, like in Maya, you need to click on this button and then you set a keyframe like that. Like it won't be software related. It will just be animation theory. Like we will talk about how weight works in general, how physics work in general, how good design works, how and acting. I love talking about acting and making the story heartfelt and stuff like this. And this is something that you can apply to any animation technology. And then the other possibility would be to, I mean, I still want to keep it not very software specific, but to do it a little more, a little bit like the animation, 51 animation exercises. Like today, we are going to focus on getting our weight properly, like doing a character jumping. And then there will be a little theory lesson about how jumping works. And then you have like 1 or 2 weeks to do your own take of that. And then you could come back and we talk about, your work and analyze and see what we all can learn from it. So those are some things from the top of my head, but of course we could do other things as well.
There are a lot of options at this point, so we really appreciate the feedback because it's useful stuff. The poll didn't pop up for me. I don't know if it did for other people. Ramzan had another question.
A third button in the blue.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Look at that. I can't vote though, sadly.
You don't have a voice. We have to do what the people tell us to.
Okay. So we got a couple of things. So yeah, if you click on that third button down, I don't know if everybody got a chance to vote. While you're looking at that stuff, I will continue on with questions. We have another one that says, I have a question about force and affecting living things versus non-living things. So I guess we could speak to that briefly. I'll just jump in and start. So I think the biggest thing that we need to be aware of when we're working on living things versus non-living things is will, which is a really important thing to just always be thinking about anyway. Living things have their own will, whereas non-living things aren't going to have that same sort of thing. So we as human beings, or even as any other living entities, have the option of fighting nature. So force is going to affect it in the same way that a non-living thing can be affected. You know, if we are moving from left to right, say, we're going to have the same forces on us than it is if a rock is moving right to left. But because we have will and because we have intention, we can change that. And so then it becomes very important to get into your character's head, to figure out their motivations, what they're feeling, that sort of stuff. Whether your character is a human being with a deep, complex set of emotions, or whether your character is a iguana that, you know, is just baseline really hungry and wants to get somewhere for food, whatever the case might be, having an idea of what the character is thinking is vitally important, because that's going to dramatically affect how they're going to react to the forces. But the forces are always going to be the same. Gravity is gravity, whether we're screaming falling out of a window or we're dropping a pillow that doesn't care that it is going towards the ground. So I don't know if that answers the question or if it's in the right direction to what you were thinking, but that would be my 2 cents on it. And then Ferdinand can chime in with.
There was a little while ago, I had like a realization that it was actually after reading we had some guest articles about physics, really brilliant stuff from Alejandro Garcia, I think is his name. And I think it was the last article in the series, but I was thinking about eases and realized that there are 2 kinds of eases. There's the one that if you throw a ball into the air and it gets slower because of gravity, that's just something that affects all physical things. Everything that you throw in the air, whether it's a ball or a character, they slow down because of gravity, and then they come down. Now, when the ball comes down, the ball doesn't slow down. It just hits the ground and gets squashed or whatever follows after that. If a character with legs comes towards the ground and you look at his hip, the hip is also doing an ease because, you know, the legs are working against the force that's pushing them down and is pushing it up. And you have an ease out and ease in there. But it's done by the character. It's not happening because of gravity. And I think it's very important to know what force you are currently doing. Like if you're doing something purely physical, or if you're doing something that is okay, the character is pushing against that. I feel like that shifts something in your mind that sometimes helps to animate these scenes better. So just asking yourself, do I do this ease because of gravity, or do I do this ease because the character is working against a force? Yeah, at least that helped me.
Okay. Yeah, it's amazing when you have those little epiphanies. And I think if we go back to that first question for a second, the longer you do this, the more you have those little things that spark in your head, and then it becomes easier and easier to see where you had an issue and you can solve it. So it's the worst advice in a way, because I hate it, but you have to keep practicing. Like, if there's nothing else that you listen to from anything that we tell you at Animator Island, keep practicing, just keep at it, because it will do so much more for you than listening to us gibber. We can offer you little bits and pieces, and it's important, and it'll help you move forward. But if you don't put pen to paper or mouse to screen or whatever you do, it's never going to get that much better. So
another realization, another one of these moments where it's like, oh, this is so obvious, I should have gotten that much earlier, was like, I started learning animation professionally in 2009. Like I started studying at the Film Academy. Now it's 2017. And just a couple months ago, I realized what's wrong with this thing that you always get told as an artist, that you have to do the 10,000 or 100,000 hours or drawings of practice. Like if you ask people for advice, other artists, they always say, you have to practice. You have to practice every day. But that's only half of the truth. The other half is that you then actually have to analyze what you did wrong in this drawing, so the next one gets better. If you just do 10,000 or 100,000 bad drawings, you're not making progress. But if you, after every drawing, check, what am I doing wrong? And that's, again, the thing that we talked about earlier. It's really difficult to do that by yourself. Ideally, ask somebody who's better than you, who can tell you immediately. And that was crazy that it took me so long to actually see that clearly. Yeah.
And just to touch on it, it's not necessarily that you won't improve if you don't analyze them, but you will go so slowly that it'll be kind of back to that whole, I feel like I'm walking without moving thing. Like, you'll get better, but it will be so slow because you're not taking the things and applying them to the next drawing. One thing that's really helped me, and again, this is a drawing thing, but you can apply it to animation, is redoing something. If you ever have, even if it really helps if you do a drawing that you hate. Like if you do a drawing or an animation that's just terrible and you're like, this is garbage. Here, I have one here. I did this in 2002 and I'm working on redoing it now. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's one of the most hideous things you'll ever see in your life. Like, what is that? That's garbage. Anyway, but I never analyzed it. I never looked at it and was like, why is this so awful? Well, because her arms are very broken and nobody throws a basketball like this. But I didn't do that in 2002. So now, 15 years later, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and figure out what I need to do differently. And you can kind of see here, I just started going through and taking reference and making new poses, all related to basketball, which I know little about because I'm not very coordinated. But that process and doing, instead of one drawing, doing 20 drawings and then figuring out what works in each one, like Ferdinand's saying, it's just so valuable. It's just really good stuff. So it's highly recommended in that regard. So totally agree with that advice from Ferdinand.
All right. So let's look at the poll now, because I think Samia's question actually refers to it, right? The options of the classes. So, I mean, we're only 6 people here, so this is probably not the most representative, but classes focusing on doing exercises has the most votes with 50%. And of course, it's a very practical thing, to actually do an animation and learn how to improve that animation. And during that, also learn the theory. I think that should be our goal here. Then just weekly classes focusing on theory, which only got 33%, and 51 animation exercises only got 17%, which is kind of weird because it has something in common with the third option. But yeah, I think also the class format might be really good so that people can actually, if we figure the technical details out, talk to us and show their work. We can analyze it together. So that's good to know. Thank you very much for taking the poll, for giving us this information. Really helps us to create something that is helpful to you, which is our goal.
Definitely.
All right. Yeah, so yeah, Sami, I will definitely keep what you wrote in mind. We can write later on Facebook. Is there any other question that anyone wants to ask us? Because if not, I think we have to slowly come to an end.
And another thing is don't hesitate afterwards, if you think of something, to send us a note via email or on Twitter or Facebook. You can certainly contact us at any time. If you're thinking about it and you say, oh, I had this idea for if you did do future webinars that are exercise based, would you do it like this or this? If you have any questions like that, it'll help us to think about them. So please let us know. The hope is that we'll continue this rolling so that we can build on it. And we did a Q&A last year, I think it was now, which I thought went pretty well, but then it kind of, again, life interrupted a bit in places. So we're going to try and get this on a little bit more of a regular schedule so that you guys will be able to plan around it.
Yeah,
I would hope that it's possible before our next official one, we might be able to send out another newsletter. So if you haven't signed up yet for the newsletter, you can go to animatorisland.com. It's right on the sidebar there, and you can sign up for the newsletter. It goes up periodically, kind of sporadically, but it's a good way to keep up with what's coming and then what recent updates were there. Or if we find something interesting that animators would really appreciate, we'll send it out. So sounds good. Okay. Well, I think somebody taking notes. That's good. That's a good thing to do. You should take notes.
awesome.
And keep a log of stuff that you learn and you pick up, because you'll forget it otherwise, and we all do that. So if you have a little notebook that you can sketch down.
Actually, do that online. Like I set up like wiki software that you can use. You can even use the wiki software from Wikipedia to write like your own wiki, and that you could use to archive your notes, so you can search them. Because one of the biggest problem with notebooks is, you might know that you have written something down, but you might not know where. There are systems that can help you to find stuff in your notebooks, like the bullet journal systems, which also, one of the part is that you make table of contents for the stuff and that you have it a little more organized. That might also, if you're more into that paper feeling, that might be something to look into. As a little outlook on what we'll be doing next.
Here's what not to do. This is my file. So listen to him in this regard, not me, because it's clearly better.
Creative chaos. Okay, so
dump it out on the floor.
The big wall where you draw everything together. The next thing we'll be doing with this webinar software is actually, I already wrote on some animation groups. I offer that you can send us animations and maybe your demo reel or something for us to take a look at. And yeah, we would like to do that with other people in the room. Like, you are invited to come back, and we all have a look at everyone's animation together, and we just exchange tips and critiques and try to all learn from each other. I think that would be a very interesting experience. So if you have an animation where you're like, I don't know what's wrong with that, like I feel like it's not the best, you can just send us an email, upload it to YouTube or Vimeo. I think that would be the best. You can set it to unlisted, so only people with the link can see it. And then we might collect these. And then for the next webinar, we have a look at it. And yeah, and everybody who does this, of course, also gets some coupon code. So if we ever do paid classes or something like this, you can, of course, get like 50% off or something like that.
Let me try again. For the foreseeable future, we're going to try and keep everything free and such. Yes. This is just, down the road, if we want to do something really high-end and technical, and we want to go really in depth with a few people, then we might do something that's, an official class or something like that. But for now, we're going to just come chat with you guys. So to answer the question in the chat there, yes, you absolutely can send the link to the reel along. If there's a specific shot in the reel that you want us to focus on, let us know. Otherwise, we'll try and touch on a few things. But obviously, if everybody sends reels to us, which would be great because we'll take it, but we can't spend forever on every single shot. So if there's something specific that you want us to look at, definitely detail that in the email or in the Facebook message or whichever you're going to go.
Yeah, and if we get a lot of links, like a lot of people want to have their opinion on reels, we might do this a regular thing. Like we could do this once a month or every 2 months, but it is impossible for us to just reply to everyone should that happen. So, but yeah, always feel free to send us stuff, to ask us questions. We could also maybe make articles about it, of course. So yeah, and most importantly, thank you very much, guys, for taking your time, for going on this webinar adventure with us. This feels really great that you were there. Really great questions. And yeah, just thank you so very much.
Indeed. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. And I guess then we'll sign out. Send us those things and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Have a fantastic day, night, evening. Talk to you soon.
Whatever it is for you. So long.
Bye.